to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and I've been delighted and looking forward to talking to Jonathan Feldstein today. He is the president and the founder of the Genesis 123 Foundation. He was born and educated in the United States and immigrated to Israel in 2004. And his son-in-law is currently serving in the IDF, so we have a lot to talk to him about. He also has a website. It's called love.genesis123.com, and there's a picture of that landing page on the screen there. Again, love.genesis123.com. Jonathan, good to see you today. How are you, friend?
It's good to be with you, Jerry. Perry, sorry, why did I say that?
That's all right.
I'm doing as well as we can here in Israel under the circumstances.
I can't even imagine. Let me just ask you that one question. How do you guys sleep at night?
Self-medicating, to be honest. It's been stressful. It's been very stressful. It's very hard to go day to day. And last night, because today we're observing Tisha B'Av, the anniversary of the destruction of both temples, and it's a fast day, a day of mourning. The Iranians actually threatened that they would attack us today. So going to bed last night was particularly harrowing, wondering if we're going to wake up again with air raid sirens. It's not been easy the last few weeks.
Okay, so you basically are facing several fronts. You got Hezbollah to the north and Lebanon. I'd like to get an update on what's happening in Gaza with Hamas. You still have the Houthis over there, waving their saber in the air. And, of course, Iran's ranked up pretty high. So you're looking at all fronts. Let's go to Gaza first. How close are they or are you to finishing the job there?
You know, finishing the job militarily is playing whack-a-mole with terrorists, because every time we pull out of a particular part of Gaza, the terrorists keep coming back up. The really positive thing that I have to mention, it's funny how Kamala Harris recently mentioned that the populations are shifting multiple times since the last 10 months. The good news is they can, because Hamas is not physically above ground controlling everything. It's very hard to say militarily when that will be finished, but that's going to take some time. But as Prime Minister Netanyahu said when he spoke in Congress a few weeks ago, it's not just the demilitarization, it's also the de-radicalization. And it's this ideology of Hamas, of radical Islam, that is going to be the hardest thing to defeat, whether we defeat them militarily or not. We need a generation or more to undo the brainwashing. And I know we're going to talk about it, but that's why we are actively proposing what we call the solution for peace in Gaza, and people can go to solutionforpeaceingaza.com to get information and be part of that.
Okay, I want to come back to that. Let me just stay on a couple things here. First of all, sure. I understand your son-in-law is obviously serving there in the IDF. What part is he involved in?
So my son and son-in-law are combat reservists. My son is being called up again in 2 weeks for a full month, and he's expecting to go to the north. My son-in-law has a base on the Gaza border. His base was overrun by the terrorists on October 10th. What you didn't know is, as of next week, my youngest son will be drafted in the Army, and he's going in as well.
Wow. Thoughts and prayers with you, Dad.
Thank you. Thank you.
Recently, the United States has gotten a little more aggressive in sending some strong signals. We have the USS Abraham Lincoln. It could be there by now. We have nuclear sub heading that way, in addition to other support. Is that being received?
Very much. And as a very proud American, I'm proud, I'm grateful. I think it's the right foreign policy thing to do. I just honestly hope that if push comes to shove and it's needed, these not be just shows of support, but actual will be used if necessary, because ultimately it's the Iranian threat that continues to funnel the tentacles of all of the octopus that they control. And as you mentioned before, we have terrorists on every front. And ultimately, we can talk about Gaza and finishing the job against Hamas. But ultimately, as long as Iran continues to fund and arm and create the ideology of Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and other terrorist groups, we're going to continue to see this problem.
So, Jonathan, at the end of the day, I want to be respectful here, but it appears to me you've been dealing with all the tails of the snake, not the head. Now the head is in the crosshairs. Do you think anything's going to happen?
I can't answer if I think it's going to happen, but my answer is I think it should happen, especially if there's an attack on us now, the kind that they're threatening. This is, to me, the pull the Band-Aid off approach, that if we're going to be suffering in the kind of attack that they're threatening, we'll see hundreds of people die here in Israel on a daily basis for a number of weeks, not just because of the Iranian threat, but the Hezbollah threat specifically. My thinking is if that's going to happen here anyway, we need to rip the Band-Aid off, take out the supreme leader, take out the president of Iran, take out all of the IRGC leaders and their bases, and do the same with Hezbollah in Lebanon. I kind of believe that when that happens, if you remember toward the end of The Wizard of Oz, when the Wicked Witch melts and all of her, I forget what they're called, the guards, and you would think that they would revolt and kill Dorothy, but in the end they celebrate. They're grateful. And I believe and I hope and I pray deeply that if we were to take out the leaders of all these terrorist entities, that the Iranians, the Lebanese, the Yemenites, and certainly the Gazans will come and celebrate and look for a peaceful and prosperous future.
You're talking about something that has been mentioned, but few dig deeper down into it, and that is that the civil unrest in Iran is significant. And if the leadership was taken out, they would be rejoicing in the streets in a second.
Indeed, and I have a very dear friend who was just here. You should have her on. She's an Iranian, she was born in Iran, became a Christian in Iran over 20 years ago, and was arrested and sentenced to death in Iran 15 years ago for apostasy, for becoming a Christian. And she was just here in Israel for her second visit last month. And she reports that the Iranian people hate their regime as much as we do, fear it, and we have the same enemy. And when she was in prison 15 years ago, she saw how the failure of the Obama administration missing the ball and not giving the opportunity to the Iranians to get rid of the regime. Then it was Ahmadinejad, and and I say Israel, I say America, I say the West. We need to have strength, tremendous fortitude in defeating that. They're the Nazis of our generation, and you don't appease Nazis. You defeat them, you crush them, and you have to change the thinking of the populations.
One other question before I come back to your recommended solution. When the Gaza war broke out and Israel was going in and strategically going at this, one of the shocking things was the size and the amount of the underground tunnels that went to Egypt. And it kind of put some of our brains on tilt. To Egypt? Are you telling me Egypt was wink, wink, nod, nod, and pushing things over to Gaza?
Well, I'm glad. First of all, there were thousands of miles of tunnels underneath Gaza, and they're still uncovering them. And yes, the ones going under the border to Egypt, ones that are big enough to drive an SUV through, were built. And the only thing I don't know, and I'm not in intelligence, I just follow the news, is whether it's formally the Egyptian government that has been supporting Hamas in this capacity, and as you said, the wink wink, or if it's just average Egyptian soldiers that you can give $100 to turn their backs for a couple of days and do what's necessary. Either one is bad, and that's why when we get to the topic of what's the actual solution for peace in Gaza, it can't be the Egyptians, it can't be the Arab states that have this culture of wink wink, and among whom there is still a culture of radical Islam.
One other wink I want to mention, and that is Saudi Arabia to Israel in airspace going into Iran. Isn't that a wink?
That's a very big deal. Both the Saudis, with whom we don't have diplomatic relations yet, and Jordan, which for the last 10 months has been almost as horrible as many of the Islamic regime countries in terms of blaming Israel for horrible things. Both Jordan and the Saudis have said, no, the Iranian things cannot fly over our airspace, and conversely, Israel will be able to use their airspace to defend itself. That's a very big deal, and that does give me hope for the future.
So with the solidarity of the Abraham Accord staying in place and Saudi Arabia kind of just wink, that's an open door for Israel.
Indeed, and it's something we need to exploit, and I hope and trust that our government is doing that as we speak, and that's really important. And by the way, it's important to note that it's not just the Iranians are not just a threat to Israel in the Middle East, but very much to the Saudis and very much to the Jordanians. The Jordanian monarchy is very weak, and the Saudis without Israeli support, the Iranians without Israeli support could come and make that a puppet state like Lebanon. So that they know that they need to be doing this. The fact that they're now doing it publicly is hopeful, and I hope is a foundation that we can build upon for the future.
All right, so let's come to your heart here, and that is you have been working hard and writing and talking about a solution. Lay the foundation down for this, Jonathan.
Sure. So the first thing that's so important to remind people is I'm an Orthodox Jew. I'm not a Christian, and I'm proposing a radical solution that I believe is the only solution. Because if we really want peace, if we really want prosperity for 2+ million Gazans who have been hijacked for 20 years by Hamas and another couple of decades before that by the Palestinian Authority, then we need to look at not the reflexive solution of just throwing them a bone and creating a Palestinian state, which isn't viable, and we can go into that. But what are the underpinnings of why we don't have peace? We don't have peace because of the radical ideology, and so we need to change that. And I again want to give the link to solutionforpeaceingaza.com. We very cleverly put quotes there, even from Biden administration representatives, indicating why this is not only a fight that needs to be taken in the streets against the terrorists, but against an ideology. And so the solution, very simply, which we can unpack, is to bring, I'm saying, quote unquote, an army of Christians who volunteer to be responsible for the complete rebuilding and rehabilitation of Gaza, from everything from under the ground where those tunnels are and were, all the way up to rebuild their hospitals and their schools and their school system and the nutrition system and the educational system and everything that you and I take for granted living in a viable Western democracy. And let that be through the army of Christians coming in to share their love and the genuine hope that they will be prosperous one day, and that they, as Christian volunteers, can support that we will also have the opportunity to impact the recognition that people who love the God of Israel also love the people of Israel, and the state of Israel is an essential part of the puzzle, not problem, but in fact the solution. And I don't know if that means bringing 2 million Gazans to Jesus and becoming Christian, or if it just means an exposure to an ideology and a way of thinking and a vision for a hopeful future that they've never had, ever had.
I want to talk more about that. Let me take a quick break. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, so honored to have with us, and we're Skyping him in live this morning from Israel, Jonathan Feldstein. He's the president and the founder of Genesis 123 Foundation, and the website is love.genesis123.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Such an honor to us today to Skype in live from Israel. Jonathan Feldstein, he's the president and the founder of the Genesis 123 Foundation. He himself was born and educated in the United States and then immigrated to Israel in 2004. His two sons and son-in-law are about to serve or currently serving in the IDF. This is a dad that has a lot on his mind and his heart, so pray for him. He does have a website, love.genesis123.com is the website, and there's the picture of the landing page. We're talking about Christians going into Gaza and doing what they do best and help these communities to rebuild. We have an organization that I think the premier response organization to disaster relief, Samaritan's Purse, as you know, that's headed up by Franklin. So basically what you're suggesting here, Jonathan, is kind of a Christian version of that, coming into Gaza and helping these citizens to rebuild. And often action speaks louder than words. I totally get that. Is it possible, though, it could be criticized for proselytizing?
Of course, it's possible that it could be. First of all, I want to mention my article last month in the Washington Times was shared with Franklin Graham, and he likes the concept. But actually what we're talking about is building a new multinational corporation that's even bigger than Samaritan's Purse itself. I would hope that Samaritan's Purse and many other like-minded ministries would be involved. We've already gotten a number of people to go to the solutionforpeaceingaza.com website and express their interest in volunteering and supporting, in getting updates, because we're proposing something that's really radical. And as you said, it's something that Christians do best. But absolutely, there will be people who will be suspicious or critical of an intention to proselytize. That's not our mission. We need to change hearts. Changing hearts, you know, these people, and I feel bad for them, I really do. 40 miles behind me is the Gaza Strip. I can drive to the beach in Gaza in an hour and a half. And we Israelis truly want prosperity there. We don't want to control 2 million people. But from my perspective personally, it wouldn't be so horrible to have 2 million neighbors who, even if they don't convert to Christianity, at least understand that Allah is not the creator, that Allah has failed them, that all of the ideology that they've been inbred for decades and generations is incorrect. And it's only through a relationship with the God of Israel, who chose the people of Israel, who gave the land of Israel to the descendants of Israel through Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, that this is actually where we find peace. And I pray that by the time my grandson, my oldest grandson, is being conscripted to the IDF. I know he will be. He's 5. But I pray that by that time, maybe we'll already begin to see a change of hearts. Maybe we'll see 5-year-old boys and girls in Gaza not growing up with the hate-filled doctrine, the brainwashing that has been going on for generations.
So, Jonathan, the Gazans that were led out of Gaza before the attacks and helped to their lives to be saved, and that was done by you Israelis. Did that resonate with them at all?
You know, it's hard. I'm sure on an individual basis, but culturally there, under this oppressive Islamic society, it's very hard to be public, even if they know that we're not the devil incarnate, even if they know that they're living on ground under which there are biblical ruins that prove the biblical accounts that we as Jews and Christians both read. Even if they know that, it's very hard to be public about it. So that's why I think the change in society is not only required, truthfully, it's the only way to bring peace there. I live in a town called Efrat, which is in Judea. They call it the West Bank pejoratively. And closer to me, across the valley this way, is a Palestinian Arab village called Abdullah Ibrahim. It's closer to me than any Palestinian Arab community was to any of the Jewish communities that were attacked 10 months ago. And we believed until October 7th that just by engaging them by opening the doors and letting people come to work and exposure to us and getting a fair salary for a good day's work, that we would be able to have peace and coexistence. And honestly, the rug for that has been pulled out from under us as well. It's not because we hate Arabs, it's because we just don't know who we can trust anymore.
So you're asking Christians to come in and be peace brokers?
I'm asking Christians to do, as you said, do the best, what Christians do best. If this will be the largest missions trip in the world, to rehabilitate and restore an entire society, and that will be incredible. And it's doable. It really is doable. There are many more things that we don't know about what needs to happen. We need to provide housing for 100,000 people. We need to provide transportation. We need to provide security. It needs to somehow be under the auspices of the Israeli government, which is the controlling authority. And we can't give over to the UN or any of our Arab neighbors. And it needs to be done with the imprimatur, if not the outright support of the US, the Western powers. And honestly, I even think many of the Arab countries might get behind this, even though they might have an issue with the concern for proselytizing. You know, Arab nations like the Saudis, like Qataris, like the Emiratis, the Jordanians have been throwing in tens of billions of dollars over the decades to fund a society that's failing, that's just creating terror and has no positive virtues. And I'm sorry to be that blunt. I think that if we come in with an actual plan, you might not only find them supporting it, but funding it.
In the meantime, you live under this cloud that since October 7th. I don't think we in the West here in America understand this. We read about it, we see it, we sense it. Those of us who've been to Israel may have a little bit better feel for it, but we don't live with it 24/7. How would you rate the average citizen's resolve?
Oh, that's a great question. The average citizen's resolve is really, really good, and that's inspiring. You know, we're still in the midst of the trauma. We're nowhere near close to post-trauma here from October 7th, and every day, every week, there's more trauma because of rockets coming in and people getting killed. But the resolution here, the sense of national purpose, it is getting political, and that's unfortunate, and the politics is getting mixed up specifically with the imperative to bring home the 115 hostages who are still in captivity in Gaza. But the national resolve is really strong. You know, I'll just share one piece about my son going into the Army next week. He has asthma, so he can't serve in a combat unit. And I've not shared this publicly at all yet, so this is a scoop for you. He's going in, and on day one next week, going to be refusing orders to be assigned to the unit that he's being recruited for because it's not good enough for him. He wants to contribute more to the Israeli society and IDF. And that's going to mean he's going to spend the first couple of days in the Army, in an Army jail, until they assign him something that he'll be happy with. And I'm not saying that everyone in Israel is crazy like that. But I think that is a greater indicator of the resolve, of the commitment, of the understanding that this is a just war. It's a war we didn't want, but it's a war that we're in the midst of. And even with the losses, it's a war we will win.
Gosh, how do you process that, Dad?
It's helpful to have conversations like this, to be honest. But yeah, you know, between being a 59-year-old man who wakes up at night and has trouble going to sleep at night and is a news junkie, no, it's not easy. And you got my very candid response earlier. I've been taking a lot more Ambien now than I used to ever before.
Well, thank you for sharing your heart. We accept that as a prayer request.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
One other thing, and I hate to even ask this question, but I think it's on everybody's mind, is you there as a citizen, how are you viewing American politics these days?
Wow. I've been voting in American elections since I'm 18. I'm a super proud American, and I'm super disappointed. I'm waiting to give the benefit of the doubt after the Democratic National Convention next week and see where they stand. And I've never been a single issue voter. But really now, to me, it does come down to a single issue. Is Israel a priority? Should it be a priority? Should we be pandering to the left or the Hamas wing of the Democratic Party? I wrote an article a few weeks ago in Town Hall called "The Last Democratic Zionist President," because I do believe, and I'm terribly sad about it, that it's not like when I grew up, when you and I first started voting, there were Democrats and Republicans. We could both shared our values. I don't feel that among the Democratic Party, and I see more pandering to the extremists. And it upsets me, of course, living here, but it concerns me deeply because even though I'm such a proud Israeli and blessed to be living here, raising my family here now 3 generations back in the land, I'm a proud American, and I don't see this as as being good for America. And I have to be honest, I'm also not one of the I don't worship Donald Trump. I think he's the best option, but candidly, I wish he weren't the Republican candidate, because he is divisive, and I think the Republicans have a greater chance to pull people from the center to present a really solid platform that is pro-Israel, that is pro-America, if one isn't being as divisive. But to me, nevertheless, it's a black and white decision today.
Yeah, that's an interesting analysis. I appreciate you saying that. I want to come back and have you back to talk about that more. But one other quick question before I let you go.
Sure.
And that is, do you think Jews in America are between a rock and a hard place now?
Yeah, very much. Anyone who's being intellectually honest, for sure, that's the case. Jews in America, historically, going back to before Roosevelt, have historically always voted Democratic. I'm seeing polls, and I'm hearing firsthand from American Jewish friends that they are very troubled with the idea of voting for Kamala Harris, but can't yet go as far as voting for Donald Trump. And I don't know if it's only because it's Trump as the candidate, or just uncomfortable voting as a Republican. But I think we may see record numbers of Jews voting Republican this year. And to the extent that that is positive for America, I'm enthusiastic about it.
Jonathan, thank you for your transparency this morning and opening your heart, and thank you for giving us the time. We value it greatly. We've interrupted your evening, so we don't take that lightly. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, go to love.genesis123.com. So that's love.genesis123.com and check it out. Can we get you back?
Anytime, with pleasure.
Thank you. Blessings on you, friend.
God bless.
Okay.
Thank you.